Welcome to another episode on the Joel Wright 2 channel. This video documents through photographs Vietnam-era carrier operations on the USS Midway in 1971. All the photographs you're about to see, unless I indicate differently on the photo, were taken by my father-in-law, Donald S. Jones, who at the time was an Air Force captain. Not a Navy captain, but an Air Force captain. How did that happen? Well, first, a little background. From November 1970 to October 1971, my father-in-law was deployed to Udon Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand, where he was a pilot in the McDonnell Douglas RF-4C, which was the photographic reconnaissance version of the regular F-4 fighter. Udon Air Base is in northeastern Thailand, and in fact, on this map, it's the airfield symbol that's exactly halfway between where it says Laos and Thailand. During his year-long deployment to Udon, he was assigned to the 14th Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron, where he flew 300 combat hours and earned a Distinguished Flying Cross. Now, during the middle of his year-long deployment to Thailand, the Midway was conducting single carrier operations on Yankee Station off the coast of North Vietnam during May and June of 1971. Now, it was during this time that Captain Jones managed to finagle a trip out to the Midway. My guess is that since my father-in-law was a tactical reconnaissance pilot in the RF-4, that his trip had something to do with visiting the carrier's RF-8 detachment. So a little background on the Midway. The Midway was the lead ship in a class of 3 aircraft carriers that were all laid down in the middle of World War II. They were designed to be significantly bigger and better armored than the preceding Essex-class carriers that had formed the backbone of the Navy's Pacific carrier fleet during the war. However, Midway was commissioned a week after the Japanese surrender, so it did not see any action during World War II. You can see here Midway's original configuration upon commissioning in 1945. But like with many of the other carriers that had been commissioned during World War II or shortly thereafter, Midway was extensively modified and reconstructed during the 1950s and 1960s in order to accommodate the more bigger, faster, and heavier jet aircraft. Midway's last major reconstruction was in the late 1960s when her flight deck and profile were radically altered. This is how Midway would have looked in 1971 when my father-in-law visited her. All right, so back to my father-in-law, Captain Jones, and his trip to the Midway. This is the aircraft my father-in-law took to get to the carrier. This is a Grumman C-1 Trader, which was the Navy's carrier onboard delivery aircraft at that time. This is a photo he took of the Midway out the window of the C-1 as they were approaching the carrier. During Midway's 1971 Vietnam cruise, she embarked Carrier Air Wing 5, which was centered primarily around 2 F-4 squadrons, 2 A-7 squadrons, and a squadron of A-6s, plus other aircraft to include tankers, electronic countermeasure aircraft, photographic reconnaissance aircraft, and airborne early warning aircraft, plus helicopters. My father-in-law was able to maneuver around to the front of the deck in order to get some nice shots of several aircraft preparing to catapult off the carrier. Here we see an A-7 from Attack Squadron 93 preparing to launch. Here's an A-6 from Attack Squadron 115 getting ready to go. And here are a few shots of a couple of F-4s getting ready to go and then finally catapulting off the ship. The F-4s shown here are from Fighter Squadrons VF 161 and 151. And finally, we have a RF-8G from Photographic Squadron 63 preparing to launch. And now we've got several shots from different vantage points showing different aircraft making landings on the Midway. Here's an F-4, an A-7, an A-6, a shot of another F-4 coming in, and then some really nice closer shots of an RF-8, an F-4, and an A-6 coming in for landing with their tail hooks down. And finally, a few more shots of a few aircraft actually making the trap. One of the benefits of my father-in-law's visit to the Midway in 1971 was that he actually got to take a flight in the back seat of an F-4. Here's a shot that he took from the back seat of his F-4 of another F-4 being refueled by a Ka-6 tanker. And then a close-up of his F-4 being refueled by presumably the same Ka-6 tanker. Well, that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed this photographic essay of Vietnam-era carrier operations on the USS Midway taken through the lens of an Air Force captain. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.